Every once in a while, I like to start my videos off with a neat looking opening kill, but I think that this clip in particular does a pretty good job at kind of showing off how the Kfir C2 is like. You can see in the top left my speed is going absolutely bonkers. I'm losing speed and gaining speed by the hundreds of kilometers an hour within a second or two at a time, and that is of course without using an air brake. So that's pretty much standard Kfir C2, or Kfir gameplay in general, not even just the C2. The C7's the same way. The only issue is that the Kfir C2 has 700 kilograms less thrust than the C7. While it is 15 kilograms lighter, that is not enough to make up for that difference. You are going to feel that difference in thrust if you are a C7 player jumping into the C2. So with that being said, actually, if you have the C7, there's literally no reason for you to have this aircraft whatsoever. Hell, even if you don't have the C7, I don't think that owning this aircraft is really worth it in any way. If you want to play the Kfir, then honestly, sell it on the marketplace or save the money that you would have spent on it and just buy the $60 premium. The Kfir C2 right now is selling for almost 80 Gaijin, which is essentially $80, so you could save yourself 20 bucks and buy yourself a premium aircraft and then just grind out the entire Israeli tech tree and end up with the better version in the end for less money. But that's of course what would make sense. If you chose to keep your coupon or you ended up having the misfortune of buying this thing, well, I'll at least try to show you how to have mild success in this plane. Now, I did say that this plane is worse than the Kfir C7 in every way, and that's because it is, but I still try to play it pretty much the exact same way as I play the C7. If you don't know how I do that, I'll leave the card to the video up in the top right of the screen. You can click on that and watch my Kfir C7 video, but essentially, I'm just climbing up to really high altitude, really high speed, and I try to orbital strike people with the AIM-9G. The AIM-9G has some very extensive range. It doesn't have the best tracking or the best pulling, however, so a lot of times your missile's just not going to hit anyways, even if you are shooting an unaware target. But more importantly, I like to stay at high altitude and high speed, because if you're at lower altitudes, you're pretty much going to be the center of attention. If you're the center of attention, you're going to have a lot of missiles fired at you. And if you have a lot of missiles fired at you, you're going to need a lot of countermeasures. That's something that the Kfir does not have, the C7 or the C2. It's only got 8 countermeasure drops, which if you had just a couple missiles launched at you, you're going to run out and inevitably die. I do manage to rip my wings there. I unfortunately forgot to uninstall the new boosters modification before flying this thing out, which basically means I can rip a whole lot easier than I would without having that installed. So of course after this game I went ahead and uninstalled the new boosters from my modifications. I definitely recommend you do that yourself if you have problems ripping with this plane. Another good thing about being high altitude when it comes to evading missiles is it's just easier to evade missiles at high altitude. Of course, missiles perform better at high altitude, so if you're getting launched out within the same ranges, that's not the case. But what is often the case, and why I say that, is people tend to launch missiles from further range at higher altitude. And that's just because the missiles can go further at high altitude. Like I said, they perform better. But once that missile motor burns out, it becomes extremely easy for a Kfir C2 or C7 to kinetically defeat. And with just a couple of pulls, especially true with something like Sparrows, people tend to launch those from up to even 10 kilometers away with their E2s and Sky Flashes, which is just not something you want to do against a Kfir. If they're aware, which of course they're going to be, they have RWR, they're going to kinetically defeat that, no problem, and you're just wasting a missile at that point. If you're a C2 player and you have no idea what the hell I'm talking about, I'll leave my SAR evasion video up in the top right. You can watch that as well. But essentially, for the Kfir anyways, you're probably just going to want to turn a little bit left to right when a missile's fired at you, a Sparrow or any Fox 1 missile that is. Not hard, you don't want to be turning so hard to where you're dumping speed, but just a few key taps to turn yourself, 45 to 90 degrees left or right, and then pull a little bit harder as the missile gets closer to you, and that should defeat Sparrows when they're launched at you, as long as you've got your timing right. It's going to take some practice if you've never done it before, so don't get too frustrated if you find yourself dying. Despite the intense speed bleed of this plane, I am still going to be able to energy trap a MiG-23 that goes vertical for me. He's starting on less energy in that case, and even though I wasn't even key tapping to maintain speed throughout my turns, if I just go vertical, I've got enough thrust, I have enough starting energy that I can kind of stall him out and then come back around on him like that. He doesn't have the energy to defend, and that's exactly what I'm going to be doing to the next couple of planes. This plane is an extremely difficult top tier to play effectively. Even if you are pretty good at top tier, you're not necessarily going to be an effective player in the Fear, because it's not a carry plane by any means. It's kind of a sit in the back seat and pick up some scraps once in a while type of plane. It is fun in my opinion, but you're not going to be having the deciding outcome for your team as to who wins or loses. You kind of just have to hope your team kind of kicks ass and you're able to pick up a few kills along the way. However, if your team just starts to die all around you, you're really not going to be winning the game. You're going to get hunted down. You don't have the missiles or the countermeasures to make up for the fact that you're at a numbers disadvantage. Despite this clip, I know it's a 1v4, but I mean, it's really just for entertainment with a couple of pointers here and there throughout the clip. This almost never happens. Don't expect to be able to 1v4 in a Fear, even a Fear C7. And with that being said, I do know that there are a couple people here at the airfield, or at least one guy, and I see him taking off. I'm going to wait for him to leave the airfield. The reason I'm going to wait for him to leave the airfield, I could absolutely just strafe him right now or launch a missile at him right now. However, if I dive to do that, the SPAA is going to start shooting at me, and while I won't die to it, it is going to alert him that I am there. And so he'll look around and he'll probably see me, and then he'll pop some chaff or flares, and then he might be able to evade the missile. So I'm just going to wait until he's a little bit further away from the airfield. He obviously doesn't know I'm here. I want to keep it that way. And once he's a far enough distance away to where I don't think he'll be able to hear his anti-aircraft shooting at me, I'm going to go ahead and spool up the AIM-9G and get a nice launch on him. Spoiler alert, he doesn't ever know it's coming, which is the goal when you orbital strike with the AIM-9G. But his teammate very easily could have called me out, and if he was paying attention, he should have seen me anyways, because clearly that MiG-27 did. Likewise, that MiG-27 could have probably picked me off too. I was tunnel visioned in on the MiG-23, and if he had any R60Ms left, I more than likely could have eaten one right there. Fortunately for me, he just doesn't shoot it at me. Instead, he's going to go ahead and turn around, which bleeds his energy, and on top of that, he's going to end up going vertical for me, which also bleeds his energy. Whereas me, I'm starting at some higher altitude. He launches an R60 from like 4 kilometers away. I don't even have to flare that. If somebody's shooting a missile out of range of you, don't use a countermeasure. Like I said, you only have 8 drops. Just use kinetic energy to defeat that missile. You can see in this gameplay I have not dropped a single countermeasure, and that's the goal of flying the Fear C2. You want to be able to evade missiles without using countermeasures and only use them when you're caught in an unlucky position or as a last resort. You can see he's gone vertical at this point. He had 0 energy to be able to defend. He could have cut afterburner and flared right there, but if he'd done that, he'd be even slower, and it's a free gun kill either way. So he loses to the stall. The Fear C2 is not a good energy fighter by any means. You see me doing some, I guess, energy fighting a little bit in the form of just kind of climbing and going vertical on people. But that's only because I'm starting with such a dramatic energy advantage. If the fight is a little bit more even, at least in the starting position, you're not going to win. It bleeds speed too much, and it does get it back fairly quickly. It doesn't get it back nearly as quickly as the C7 does, and that's what makes the C7 a little bit more bearable in a dogfight, whereas the C2, you're going to see in a couple clips here, you just dump all of your energy. This is what I mean by being in a little bit of a vulnerable position. If I had just kept on flying, that missile very well could have hit me. So as a last resort, I am going to use one of my, maybe even 2 of my countermeasure drops out of 8, which is kind of scary to think about because I only have a few more left already, and I had only defeated 1 missile, but it was a necessity at that point. And I'm going to go ahead and look for my next target. The guy that fired at me turned away. He's going to go do something else, as he should. And I'm going to do the same. Looking for targets to lob the same 9G at. I'm going more than fast enough, and I have plenty of altitude to start this missile off at, to where I can do a 4.5 kilometer shot pretty easily with an AIM-9G. It's just a matter of will they see it. Unfortunately, I don't get the shot anyways, just because everybody kind of turned nose hot to me. AIM-9Gs, of course, are not all aspect, which kind of denies me a shot there. I do see the Su-22 kind of looks like he's tunnel visioned in on this FGR, so I'm going to see if I can provide any kind of help. Got to be careful not to rip my wings, so all my movements are kind of perfect XY maneuvers. I'm not trying to split the axes in any way. I'm trying to use rudder as little as possible because that tends to rip your wings when you start turning on the X and Y at the same time. I do get an AIM-9G off the rail, but the C.2 was aware, he flares it pretty easily, and now I'm down to guns only. I'm trying to turn around to actually put myself in a useful position, but just look at the kind of speed bleed I have. However, once you put the plane in a perfectly straight line and don't touch your inputs whatsoever, it does gain speed pretty quickly. However, once you make one turn like I do right here, just losing all of my energy, and I'm essentially just floating at this point. I'm a kite. I'm a sitting duck. If there was anyone around me, I'd be a pretty easy kill. Thankfully, there's really not too many teammates left, and that's why I'm starting to turn in the way I am. But I do want to leave this clip in here just to drive home the point that if you're dogfighting in this plane, you're going to get slow. You're not going to get your energy back that easily unless they let you fly in a perfectly straight line, which almost never happens. And once that happens, there's really not a whole lot you're going to be doing. There's only 2 AIM-9Gs on the plane, so once you run out, you're down to guns. The guns aren't that effective. They're defas. The belt's not the most consistent. It doesn't matter if you're using the AP, the HE, whatever it may be. You're likely going to get crits or hits before getting a kill. I run default because it's a good mix of HE and AP. Luckily, I managed to get a one-shot into the MLA right there, and now I'm going to try to chase down the C.2. I did come out of a little bit of a turn, so my speed is not quite as great as his. However, he's going to turn, I'm going to whiff a shot, and he's a MiG-21 miss, which is famous for bleeding energy, but I am a Kfir C.2, which is even worse. So a couple of turns here, we both pulled 2 turns, but look at how much distance he's able to put between us in that time frame, just because of how much more energy I lose in my turns. So I'm going to go ahead and dive and just try to catch him. He ends up ripping his wings, which is fine by me. But, you know, again, not a very good dogfighter. The energy bleed is just too great. If it lasts for any longer than a couple seconds, you're going to have no speed left to fight with. So, again, I would try recommending using this plane at altitude, lob your 9Gs from really far away, hope people aren't paying attention, and evade missiles kinetically when possible. I hope this video helps you find some success in your C2, and most importantly, I hope I'll see you in the next video. I'll see you.